Good evening, hello and welcome. You're watching The Right Stand here on CNN News 18 with me, Poonam Burde. China's persecution of Uyghur Muslims is an open secret. It is an ethnic minority that lives prominently in the Xinjiang province in China. They are at the receiving end of arbitrary detention. We've seen torture stories coming in of sexual assault, forced sterilizations. We've heard those stories coming to the fore from that region for years together. Report after report by several world bodies, including the United Nations and other international ones, have thrown light on these excesses by the Chinese administration. But nothing changes, unfortunately, for those millions of Uyghurs in China, specifically in the Xinjiang province. There is a new report now that has come to the fore, and this is by the Human Rights Watch that has put the spotlight back on the issue. They have now alleged that China's abuses against the community, against the Muslim community, go much beyond just the Xinjiang province. They're also now naming two other provinces, the Gansu province and the Ningxia province. These two account for the highest number of Muslims outside of the Xinjiang province, and the Communist Party now seems to be putting their plan of sinicizing the country in action in those two provinces. Citing satellite images, this report has now thrown light on human rights, on the human rights excesses that we have seen. We've also had the Chinese authorities who've allegedly demolished, closed down or decommissioned several places of worship of the Muslim community or mosques. This is all a part of the government's efforts to restrict the practice of Islam in the country in these two provinces. This is what this US body has now alleged in its report. Remember, back in 2020, there was a report that came to the fore from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. The administration was then blamed for damaging and destroying 2/3 of the mosques in the Xinjiang province. History seems to be repeating itself. So let me first take you through what the highlights of this new report are. These are the allegations that the Human Rights Watch has now made. One, that the Chinese administration is destroying, closing and repurposing these mosques. Charge 2 is that systematic effort is there to curb the practice of Islam by the Chinese administration. The other charge that is coming to the fore is that of shutting off mosques in the Ningxia province and the Gansu province, two other provinces other than Xinjiang where we're seeing these excesses. Another allegation that has been red flagged now by this US body is that the Islamic features like domes or minarets on top of these mosques, they have now been taken down. In Xinjiang, 2/3 of the mosques have also been destroyed, is what this report comes out and says. Now, in one of the Muslim majority villages in the autonomous region of this particular place, 3 of the 6 mosques have been destroyed. They've been stripped off their domes, minarets, as far as the Human Rights Watch report goes. The rest have had their main prayer halls destroyed as well. So let's take a look at what exactly these cities are and how they have changed over a period of time. This is what it looked like in 2009. This is what it looks like in 2019. The 852 mosques existed as far as the Chungwei city is concerned. In 2009, 10 years later, cut across, 214 mosques have been altered, 58 mosques have been consolidated, 37 unregistered venues have been banned. Now, the Chinese administration says that this is all as per the law. Well, the jury is out on that. Let's take a look at some of the other provinces where similar scenes are being witnessed. Let's take a look at this particular province. From 2009 to 2019, what has changed? There were 69 mosques in 2009 in this particular city. In 2019, 6 mosques have been combined. There has been a 30% drop in religious activities of the minorities that stayed there. Cut across to the next province as far as the Gansu province is concerned, and here's what statistics have revealed. These are what news reports have confirmed. It also finds mention in the report of the Human Rights Watch. The Gansu province, there were 10 mosques that were reduced and combined over a period of time by the Chinese administration. The Islamic architectural features have been altered in at least 31 of these mosques, is what has now been recorded. Cut across to another county in one of these provinces in China, and this is what has happened there. There's registration of 12 mosques that has been cancelled by the Chinese administration. 5 mosques have been closed down as well. The action continues. At least 5 have been consolidated or improved, is what the Chinese administration says. The people living there, of course, differ from this particular definition of what has happened to their places of worship. Now, some residents in these regions have publicly opposed the Sinicization policy, but their resistance has so far been futile. Over the years, there have been many who have been jailed, they've been detained, especially after clashes broke out with authorities. There have been closures or demolitions of these mosques as well. Let's take a look at some of those numbers and the reality as far as Uyghur Muslims are concerned. Let's take a look at what exactly has been happening as far as the Xinjiang province is concerned. Over 1,200 Uyghur camps have been noted of in the Xinjiang province. This is the reality that has been gotten to the fore multiple times by multiple international bodies. There are camps that are designed to erase ethno-religious identities, is what several of these UN reports have also pointed out. Uyghur Muslims have spoken of being detained without trial. They've spoken of their family members being picked off in the middle of the night, taken into these camps, re-education camps as they are called, and then that is where the abuse begins. 1 million plus Uyghurs have been imprisoned. This is as per a 2019 US report. There are laws on minority rights are completely weak, is something that another UN report has pointed out. This report came out just last year in 2022. Now here's where the twist lies. The Xi administration, while suppresses human rights in the Muslim community in their own country, they come out and preach to the world about the cause, about the Palestinian cause, to talk of in the recent scenario. They in fact hosted ministers from Saudi Arabia, from Egypt, from Jordan, the Palestinian Authority and even Indonesia just 2 days ago. Leaders from the Islamic nations had a message for Xi Jinping. They wanted him to play peacemaker in the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. Here's how Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud told the media about what their expectations were during this particular meeting and what their expectations were from Xi Jinping as far as this entire meeting went. Well, it was about the UNSC, but they also did speak of the ongoing conflict and how the Palestinian cause must be upheld. This is what the Saudi foreign minister had to tell the Chinese when he met them. We must immediately stop the fighting and we have to ensure that the killings are stopped. Must immediately deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza is also something that was told to them. We must resolve the crisis, end war that is being waged against Gaza was the message that came in from Saudi Arabia. Let's take a look at what the Egyptian foreign minister had to say during that particular meeting. Looking forward to stronger role from powers like China was the message that came to the fore from the Egyptian foreign minister. We need to stop the attacks against the Palestinians in Gaza was also what they came out and said. They then went on to say that major nations have given cover to current Israeli attacks, and that is something that must be called out was the message. Now China also came out and backed this cause. China has a history of backing the Palestinian cause. They also came out and denounced Israel over what they call as occupation of the Gaza Strip, but not one word as far as the October 7th attack by Hamas is concerned. Remember, that attack killed 1,200 people. Fighting for the Palestinian cause, China says. The Chinese foreign minister had this to say. China is a good friend and a brother of Arab and Islamic nations, is what the Chinese foreign minister Wang Yi had to say. He said that we are safeguarding rights and interests of Arab and Islamic nations. Have firmly supported the just cause of the Palestinian people. This is the historical stance that China has taken. This is what the Chinese foreign minister had to say while he was hosting foreign ministers of the other countries. Now, the double speak here is quite clear, many would say. The Chinese administration has repeatedly denied allegations of crimes against the Uyghurs in their own country. Even though United Nations has said that these are crimes against humanity, China has come out and said that this is the lie of the century. Perhaps the Chinese can't see the irony of it all, many would say, but the world definitely can.
Hello, Moto.
Let's open this up to the panelists and join me on this debate on the right stand. Abdul Hakim Idris, Executive Director of the Center for Urdu Studies, joins me. Dr. Tara Karta, Distinguished Fellow of the Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies, also here. And International and Independent China Strategist, Dr. Andrew K.P. Long, also joining us here on this broadcast. Thank you so much for taking out the time and speaking with us and joining us here on this broadcast. I would like to begin by asking Mr. Idris, you've seen firsthand, heard narratives firsthand of what the reality in Xinjiang is. The new report that comes out goes on to talk about history repeating itself in two other provinces where also we see the maximum number of Muslim residents.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. In those times, the hypocrisy is the mainstream. As you know, we are talking about the CCP's Chinese Communist Party's destruction of thousands of mosques. But I want to give a highlight on the human cost. You know, when the Chinese Communist regime, Communist Party, launched the war on Islam, 2018, murdered Imam Muhammad Saleh, who is translated the Quran to Uyghur language with the permission of China. The Communist Party imprisoned him, tortured him, murdered him in concentration camp. 82 years old are religious scholars. Many thousands imams and scholars are disappeared, landed in this concentration camps, murdered and tortured. We are talking over 1 million children they are raising in atheistic system, not in Uyghur language, but in pan-Chinese communistic ideology. And over 3 million people in concentration camps. You know what their crime is? Practicing normal activities of Islam, saying Salam Alaikum, going to mosque, praying, and that was their crime. And the millions and millions landed in Chinese prisons. So this is the human cost. Today, we are seeing the destruction and demolishing the mosques in Ningxia, Gansu, Kunming around China. But we have to put highlights how many people, because of China's war and Sinicization of Islam, suffering. We can see almost, you know, the 6-7 years, we can count the mosques what China demolished. At least over 16,000 mosques demolished in East Turkestan. And the 5,000 mosques demolished or disappeared around China. While China is demolishing mosques, destroying the mosques, putting scholars and murdering them, and at the same time to be helpful to rescue other Muslims. As a Uyghur Muslim, I don't believe it, I don't buy it.
And it's interesting that the world is buying it as well, or at least the Arab nations clearly are, because their hypocrisy or their complicity in all of this is also something that we will be speaking of. But I want to get in Dr. Leong in on this as well. The facts that Mr. Idris stated, the amount of mosques that have been raised, there are reports after reports that come out. Is this a systematic effort as part of the CCP's strategy of Sinicization of all religions? Is this what they're doing?
First of all, the comparison of China policy on Xinjiang with what's happening over Gaza is completely over the tops, because no comparison at all. Because in the case of Xinjiang, it's a question of rising separatism. And then the data quoted in the report dated back a number of years ago when separatism were rearing its ugly head. And so there were hence this tremendous crackdown. But now the situation is highly stabilized, and there are many tourists flocking to Xinjiang, in both for Chinese nationals from various provinces and even foreigners. Now, the fact remains that this, over the past so many years, the livelihood of the Xinjiang people have miraculously improved according to United Nations metrics. both in life expectancy and economy. And as far as mosques are concerned, in spite of the removal or destruction of some mosques because they were hotbeds of terrorism, special targets, but the fact remains there are 25,000 mosques in Xinjiang. On a per capita basis, it's one mosque for about 57 people. It's the highest compared with any Islamic countries. And of course, if you look at the renminbi, the banknote, the Xinjiang language features there all these years since the founding of the People's Republic of China. So the Xinjiang language, the Xinjiang culture is highly preserved because it's the policy of the Chinese Communist Party that is a coexistence between different ethnic groups. China is a unique country with 58 different ethnic groups. And most of these, with the exception of the Xinjiang and perhaps Tibet, also live in great harmony. So if you look at the statistics, there are two sides of the story, but the comparisons, what's happening over Gaza is really ridiculous, over the tops.
But sir, I want to ask you, you're talking about there being enough number of mosques as far as at least the Xinjiang province is concerned. But let's talk about the other two provinces that this report has been speaking of. There's also a 2018 reference to what was referred as the Xinjiang papers. It was the first known reference, perhaps, a leaked paper that spoke of mosque consolidation as far as that particular province and the rest of China is concerned, where they spoke of how it was the CCP's strategy to ensure that more mosques were not built, that the overall number of mosques had to be compressed. Would you deny that there was no such internal document that eventually was leaked out?
Sorry, are you asking me?
Yes, Dr. Leong.
Okay, well, naturally the situation in Xinjiang is not confined to itself because there are separatists and in fact extremist terrorist groups spreading to other provinces where the Muslims were residing or living in Jiangsu and so on and so forth. Again, the report quoted data a number of years back, but the situation is hugely improved to the extent that a number of the restrictions, a number of the so-called camps or education camps have been closed and welcoming tourists. Previously, I mean, all these provinces, because of the rising separatism, were close to tourists even for Chinese nationals. But now, even I wanted to go to Xinjiang. I found it very difficult to even book a tour because there are so many tourists going to Xinjiang just to see the situation on the ground.
I have to respond to this allegation. I have to respond.
Sure, sir, go ahead.
Your guest even repeating the Chinese Communist Party's narrative, but he is not aware of Chinese Communist policies. Sinicization of Islam, changing zikr in the masjid, demolition cemeteries, and the banning and the Islamic activities. As a Uyghurs, we cannot have a beard like mine, you know. We cannot have a very hijab. We cannot educate our children with our religions or our language. And I think he is not aware of the Chinese Communist policy. Recent Xi Jinping's visit in August to Urumqi, what he said, make a compatible Islamic religion with Confucius and communism. They already changed the Quran and the Bible. I think he is not aware of the Chinese Communist policy. You should learn your Communist Party's policy and then repeat your lies, I think.
Dr. Leong and Mr. Idris, do stay on with us. Tara Karta also joining us here on this broadcast.
All I could say is that please visit Xinjiang yourself. Rather than believing all the rhetoric and in reports quoting out-of-date data, and the situation on the ground is very, very different now. And of course, there was a period of rising separatism, as in the case of other countries having to face separatism, even in India.
Authorities, isolation, laws. You read it. You have to read your own communistic ideology and then make a narrative. You know, you are propaganda for the Communist Party, but you are repeating the lies. You cannot make 100%. You know, the Chinese Communist Party is saying Sinization of Islam. What's mean that? Can you explain me that sinization of Islam? What to do with the separatism, terrorism? Nothing to do. You cannot put millions of people in concentration camps, torturing them, rape them, murdering them, and forcing them in working as a slave in the force camp. You cannot do it. Every around the world, every country has some problem with terrorism, but nobody put millions of people in concentration camp and turn the concentration camp into prisons. That transport the millions of Uyghur outside so-called Xinjiang, inner China. They are letting them work as a slave. This is the reality. I'm not repeating some data or not things. I'm studying Communist Party's ideology, resolution, and I'm talking it. But you are not, I think.
Well, I don't know what you study, but let's not debate about, because you don't know my study, I don't know yours, but the fact remains that the Xinjiang economy has increased 37 times over 70 years and is growing on an average rate of 3.5%.
Who gives you this data? This data, where did you get this data? This data get from Communist Chinese Party, and the Chinese Communist Party is the judge, is the persecutor, and the pulling them people in the concentration camp, and at the same time they're talking truth. The Chinese Communist Party is the mass murder in human history. More than 70 million Chinese people died because of the Chinese Communist Party's lies and the politics.
I want to get in Dr. Tarakarta in as well. Gentlemen, do stay on with me. I want to get in the neutral party. Dr. Tarakarta, we've heard both sides. We've seen these reports that come in year after year. There's really not much that can be done apart from these reports coming out and highlighting, unfortunately. But what do you think explains the kind of support that the Arab world has for China despite what is happening? Even as far as the Uyghur Muslims issue is concerned, at least 6 countries in the Arab world have come out and backed China on this issue. They've also detained several of these people and sent them back to China.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, in fact, I think the Saudi prince had been in China a couple of years ago, where he sort of supported them entirely and told that we support you against terrorism. I mean, where the platform of support is that any activity against terrorism, we are supporting that. Saudi Arabia has deported Uyghurs, and so has Pakistan. Pakistan has deported any Uyghur it can find. It has and sent them back very quickly. These are things which happen. And I just want to add this here, which once I found, which was very almost strange, was the fact that General Musharraf was sent to Beijing, and from Beijing to Xinjiang, where he told the Muslims that you must work with Beijing. So that is the extent of support which Muslim nations are giving China. Why they are giving it to them? Well, that's obvious. That's a huge economy. China supports them. And there is a targeted pressure on all of these countries, not just Muslim countries, or most countries, to get Uyghurs out of the way. Who talks about them? I mean, let's not just pull up only the Muslim countries. When the world is talking about Palestine, they're talking briefly about Afghanistan. Who talks about the Uyghurs? So there is a very strong hypocrisy across the world. It's not just the Muslim countries, it's everywhere. No one wants to speak up for them. And recently, by the way, the World Uyghur Congress, which is, as far as we're concerned, is the most representative body of the Uyghurs, have condemned the attack by Hamas. Yes. So they are not terrorists. These are people with the right to live in their countries peacefully. And on the other side of it, I'm just wondering, when all these states are going to China to say, be the mediator in Palestine, whether the Palestinians will accept them. Because the Palestinian people are well aware of the atrocities against the Uyghurs, and I have a very strong feeling, regardless of what the Palestinian Authority says, and they are supportive of China. He was there in June. I doubt that the Palestinians will want China as a mediator.
Absolutely, and like you pointed out, it's the hypocrisy of the Western powers as well, which brings me to what the UN had said a couple of years ago. In 2018, if I'm not mistaken, there was this report that came out that spoke about crimes of humanity, crimes against humanity that were taking place in China, in the Xinjiang province. But apart from those reports coming out, what exactly happens? Because even if it were to get to a vote, as far as the UN Human Rights Council is concerned, you cannot compel China to do anything about it. None of these reports are binding.
Yeah, well, nothing of the UN is binding, right? I mean, you just had a resolution on Palestine which is non-binding. So that's how the UN works. I do appreciate the point made by Dr. Andrew that, things have changed, that the place has opened up. But, well, one would like to see them not put a far less pressure on these people, and definitely 16,000 mosques raised down. That is a huge number. I mean, and a word of, I won't say advice, I wouldn't dare advise such a large power. But if you have 18 million Muslims, that was the count in 2020, I don't know what the count is now, you can't suppress these people. So there is, it seems to be rather a dangerous and very non-advisable thing to do, to wipe out mosques, change the architecture and try and change people who just want to live peacefully.
Dr. Leong, things may have changed, but the reality, the history cannot be ignored. Would you at least accept that? Or are you saying what's being quoted of what happens or happened in Xinjiang is far from reality? As China has always been saying. China, in fact, came out and said that this is the lie of the century.
Well, I think that let's look at how China dealt with the separatism and terrorism problems in Xinjiang. Rather than what's happening over Gaza, China introduced a very strong and stringent, if you like, education program, and trying to integrate the Xinjiang people with the Han culture, so that the two people can live in peace. And in fact, there are lots of Han Chinese in Xinjiang living happily together with the Xinjiang people. As I said, right from the very start, the Communist Party respects and respects now the Xinjiang culture. And
Sure.
just look at the renminbi. If you have a renminbi note, go and have a look at it. Right from the start, the Xinjiang Uyghur language was printed on the renminbi, and it's even now, along with the Tibetan language and the Han language. So China has always been respecting the Xinjiang
Sure.
culture and diversity. And in fact, it is a tenet of the Chinese Communist Party that the Han Chinese are living, is mandated to live in harmony with all these 56 ethnic groups, and
Sure.
most of them are living in great peace. And
Sure, and that's
happening
what
in
the
Xinjiang
Chinese
now
administration has also been pointing to. But many, like Mr. Idris, I'm sure are not buying that argument, which is also why every few years we see different organizations come up with reports like we just had the Human Rights Watch. Unfortunately, I'm completely out of time. I have to leave it at that. I thank you all for joining us here on this broadcast.
One thing you can add the not just the Uyghurs, Tibetan, Mongolian, Hong Konger, Chinese Christian, and the Muslim to the list, or of them separatists, terrorists, radicalized, and your guests, talk about this and repeat the CCP's propaganda narrative. Thank you.
So
Sure.
go and visit Hong Kong, where I am.
Sure, and this debate would continue. I would love to continue this because this is something that we have often spoken of. Unfortunately, this is exactly what happens. We have a report that comes out, we have debates like this that happen, but there's very little, like Mr. Idris was pointing out, that changes unfortunately for them. China, of course, continues to deny it, but we still have these issues that come up every once in a while. What is the long-term solution? What can make life better for all of these people, not just now in the Xinjiang province, but in the other two provinces as well? We'll keep a track of that. But